It is a bitter cold Saturday morning in February here at Witch Hollow Homestead, and today is one of the first days in several weeks where we have clear blue skies. The only catch is, when we have clear blue skies in winter, that means it's really cold out and really windy. So while it's beautiful, it's a little bit deceiving. For this bitter cold day, I thought it would be great to do something that was going to heat up the kitchen and heat up the house. So I decided to make some homemade vegetable broth and can it. Before I start canning, something I always like to do is check my jars to make sure there's no chips or any cracks starting, because I've had that happen before early on when I started canning, where I didn't check the jars ahead of time and then one would burst inside the canner and make an absolute mess. So I always like to double check. I tested out this vegetable broth a few weeks ago in a small batch, and I was really pleased with the results. So I'm really excited to share this recipe with you. And the best part is, this is a canning recipe that does not take long to process. Now, I'm not going to show you how I made the veggie broth specifically. You can put any kind of vegetables that you want in your broth. You can do onions, you can do garlic and peppers and herbs and whatever you like in your vegetable broth. For us, these are leftover scraps from when I cut vegetables. So whether it's some potato skins or carrot tops, celery bottoms. In this, there's a bunch of Napa cabbage from me making sauerkraut a few weeks ago. And what I do is I just keep freezing the scraps as I use vegetables throughout the weeks. And then I pull them out like this, put them in my crock pot, turn it on high, put water in it with some herbs and spices, and let it cook overnight. After cooking it on high for about 4 hours, I did lower it before I went to bed, and then just let it cook on low all night. For this recipe, I am not going to sterilize the jars beforehand. I am washing them though in hot soapy water, and I do plan on hot packing these. I am putting hot water in my pressure canner, and I am going to turn the heat on low because these jars will have cooled down by the time I'm ready to add the broth and add them into the canner, and I don't want to cause the jars to have a drastic heat fluctuation and burst. So I want to make sure this water is warm but not boiling. Recently, I learned a fun little trick that when you pressure can, in order to keep your jars really crystal clear, just put a splash of distilled white vinegar in your pressure canner, and that's it. Maybe that's a little trick that everyone else knows and I didn't until recently, but let me know in the comments. I'm going to begin by straining out my broth, and all I did was just kind of scoop it out, press out some of the liquid, and dump the vegetables in a separate bowl. If you have a compost pile, these would be great to add to that. However, we don't, so I am going to just be tossing them out. Maybe in the future. At some point, we'll have a compost pile. I'm going to fill my jars and leave an inch of headspace at the top. I I like to take a paper towel with distilled vinegar on it and wipe the rims of the jars. That way I make sure I didn't get any broth on the outside and I'll get a tight seal. I'm going to pressure can these pint-sized jars for 20 minutes at 10 pounds of pressure for my elevation. If you do quart-sized jars, then you would pressure can 10 pounds of pressure at 25 minutes. And in case this is your first time using a pressure canner, I'm going to put my lid on, secure it, turn the heat up to high. Then I'm going to wait until steam comes out in a consistent stream from the vent on the top of the pressure canner. Once that steam starts coming out, I'm going to set a timer for 10 minutes. After 10 minutes, I will put the weighted jiggler on for 10 pounds of pressure. And then I'm going to lower the heat just slightly and wait until that jiggler goes off. When it does, I'm going to turn the heat down a little bit more and allow these to can for 20 minutes. Once the 20 minutes are up, I'm going to turn the heat off, but allow the jiggler and the pot to just sit on the burner and depressurize on its own. Once there is no pressure left in the canner, I'll remove the jiggler, allow the steam to vent, and then I will be able to remove the lid once there is no more steam coming out of the vent. Here is our vegetable broth. It looks really good, and I am very pleased with how it came out, even though, as you can see, I'm giving a little bit of a questionable face. I just like to make sure I was really focused. Once you place these jars on the counter or table, wherever you're going to cool them, you want to first check the rings, make sure they're still on. If not, tighten them a little bit, because mine always loosen just slightly when I pressure can. And then allow these jars to sit here for 24 hours untouched. That way you'll get your best seal. Thank you so much for joining me today at Witch Hollow Homestead. I hope you found this video helpful and inspiring. Happy homesteading!